In the fall of 1960, the destiny of Black America was hanging on by a thread, and it was waiting on a phone call. We tend to forget the political map of 1960. The lines weren't drawn like they are today. The Republican Party was still the party of Lincoln, and leading the charge for them was an American giant, Jackie Robinson. Robinson had retired from baseball, but he was playing a new game. He believed deeply that the GOP was the path of economic freedom. He campaigned tirelessly for Richard Nixon, traveling the country, telling Black voters that Nixon was the man of courage. He famously said, "I don't trust Kennedy. He has no moral center." The Black vote was a dead heat. And then, on October 19th, the trap snapped shut. Martin Luther King Jr. was arrested for a sit-in at a department store in Atlanta. A judge sentenced him to 4 months of hard labor at Reidsville State Prison. This was a death sentence. In 1960, Georgia, a Black man, especially that Black man, did not survive 4 months of hard labor. They took him in the middle of the night, chained him in the back of a van. Coretta Scott King was 6 months pregnant, terrified that she would never see her husband alive again. The entire nation held its breath. This was the test. Jackie Robinson called on the Nixon campaign. He was pleading. He told them, "This is it. If you speak now, if you call the judge, you win the election. You show the world who you are." Robinson waited. He checked his watch. He waited some more. But Nixon, he froze. He was afraid of alienating the white voters in the South. So he did the one thing you cannot do in a crisis. He stayed silent. The phone on his desk never rang. Robinson, who would later write about the moment with tears in his words, he said, "Nixon doesn't wish the Negro ill. He just doesn't know that the Negro exists." He realized that he had bet on a man who saw Black freedom as a political calculation, not a moral imperative. But in the Kennedy campaign, they saw an opening. John F. Kennedy picked up the phone. He didn't call the press. He called Coretta. He told her, "I want to express my concern about your husband. I know this must be very hard for you." It was a gesture of simple humanity. But his brother, Robert Kennedy, made the move that counted. He called the judge in Georgia and twisted his arm until he agreed to release King on bail. The Kennedy campaign knew they had lightning in a bottle. They printed 2 million copies of a pamphlet telling the story of the phone call. They couldn't risk distributing it to white voters, so they distributed it quietly, exclusively in Black churches on the Sunday before the election. They called it the Blue Bomb, and the explosion was political. The most important reaction didn't come from MLK Jr., but from his father, who they called Daddy King. The lifelong Republican stood up at Ebenezer Baptist Church and delivered the line that killed the Black Republican vote. He said, "I had a suitcase of votes for Nixon. But because this man, Kennedy, was willing to wipe the tears from my daughter-in-law's eyes, I've got a suitcase of votes, and I'm going to take them to Mr. Kennedy and dump them in his lap." The shift was seismic. In 1956, the Republican ticket got nearly 40% of the black vote. In 1960, after that phone call, Kennedy received 68% of that same vote. That swing delivered Illinois. It delivered Michigan. It delivered South Carolina. It won the presidency for John F. Kennedy by one of the thinnest margins in history. Richard Nixon learned a hard lesson that day. In the game of history, silence is a choice. He ignored the call, and in doing so, he handed the keys of the black vote to the Democrat Party for the next 60 years. The shift wasn't about policy. It wasn't about welfare. It was about one man picking up the phone and the other man letting it ring. And that, ladies and gentlemen, wraps up our quick lesson of today in our digital classroom by the name of Unspoken Curriculum. Please like, share, follow, and I'll see you guys in the next one.